fathers can raise families, raise daughters, and raise sons. Who don't raise crime race because we don't raise guns. Dreams occur, not dreams deferred, no more raisins in the sun. Let me see you raise your fist and raise your consciousness to make this change come. Talking about a love so strong, even the dead will raise up. A love so strong, the dead will raise up. What time is it?
Time to raise up.
I said, what time is it?
Raise the boys.
I said, what time is it?
Raise the boys.
Are we ready for peace or ready for war? We crown the king of dreams with a head full of thorns. A legend is born, his words like bread to the poor. So lie these lines like breath to a corpse. Reversing effects of post-mortem rigor mortis, each verse a metaphor for metamorphosis. Different motive and intent, no Forbes, this celebrity endorsement. War controls the world in which we don't exist. Everyone is rich with our full blood to the vote.
Genocide is suicide, because as I open my eyes wide, I begin to not see my former community. Genocide is suicide, and they coming in all white, all right, all day, all night, talking about this the near north. No, this the north side. We ride every day, every night. I lost people to this community. So now you trying to rename it? Know me? No, you don't know me, and that's the problem. Genocide is suicide because she's thinking about taking a 9 and blowing her brains out. She feels misunderstood in her own hood. Could you relate? You think you right because you white, but you wrong. They say brown, stay back, black, get way, way back. That must mean that I'm in the back of the room because I always been talked about for my skin color. That's why I say the things that I say in my poetry every day. Stop asking black girls if they're mixed just because you find them attractive, as if Caucasian is some magical blood that creates beauty. Top up our communities, put us on the auction blocking bids. What's your name, boy? Kuta Kinte, Toby Rids. I'm just trying to speak the truth. They scared us songs like This Is America and ATM, because niggas finally talking about what we should have been talking about years ago. Nina Simone, Malcolm X, Langston Hughes. Art puts us back on the throne because, see, he's at home playing video games, not knowing where he really comes from. Art keeps us wholesome. They talking about the twerking is inappropriate, but see, we come from a place where we move our hips and we swing our waist and we smile and grin while we dancing on our face. But they don't understand it, so then they go grab that mace. Bass, too much bass in our voice. They say it's too much bass in our music, so somebody calls the cops. I'm looking at the meme where she's calling the cops. Was another nigga shot? Did you call the cops when Jamar Clark was shot? Did you call the cops when Chad Robinson was shot? Did you call the cops when Trayvon Martin was shot? No, you calling the cops.
8 Seasons of Art is a groundbreaking story about the Black arts community in Minnesota. Director Philip McGraw follows the story of painters, musicians, poets, and writers, all sharing how they use their art to respond to the conditions of society. His film demonstrates the long-term effects of institutional racism and structural violence on residents in the Twin Cities. The goal of raising awareness about how making and observing art is the foundation for building healthier communities. Director McGraw asserts that art is a consciousness, a state of mind that can provide healing with the simplicity of brushstrokes, words, and soul. Over a dozen featured artists in the film creatively challenged the media's narrative of Black people by embodying the consciousness of art in activism and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, man, there's something special about the Twin Cities artist community because we are really cultivating a culture of like social justice and activism and like intentionality through our crafts. An endless list of folks who are really out there putting in the work, and I think that's because there's been a community formed over a number of years. Like, we're part of this legacy, part of this lineage that's been formed years and years and years, even before I was ever even a twinkle in my father's eye. You know what I'm saying? Like, they've been doing this, is what I'm trying to say. I can think of folks like, rest in power, J. Otis Powell, who was one of my good friends and mentors, who did some of the greatest work in the Twin Cities, laying the foundation for cats like me. You know what I'm saying? Phenomenal writer, orator. You know what I'm saying? I think about other folks who I met and saw when I first came in the Twin Cities, people like the Black Liberation Project. We got Signe and Jayanthi, Million Artist Movement. You know what I'm saying? That's what they're a part of. And it's just a collective of artists and allies with Black leadership who are working towards liberation.
We are literally programmed, and I think a lot of us have, I don't know if it's ADD, I don't like those labels either. I know sometimes I can be a little whatever too as far as my attention, but sometimes it's literally hard for us to keep our eyes on somebody. I'm like, well, when are they going to be done? Like, honey, first of all, I'm a great poet. I'm pretty good at what I do. And second of all, this is information that you need, And if you already know it, then you should be grabbing a friend that doesn't. Come on. Combo.
There's just so many people out here who are not only artists, but they're also activists, but they're also teachers. They're also just folks in the community who really love their work and love the people and are giving back in real ways. And that's my favorite part about the Twin Cities, is there's so many people out here doing that. It's a beautiful thing. You don't always see that everywhere. Sometimes you go to different places where people are kind of cutthroat and it's real competitive. And I'm not saying that there's not some of that energy here, but the general overarching vibe that I've experienced is one of love and just folks really coming together and supporting each other, a lot of solidarity, a lot of working together to create something beautiful right here. So, yeah.
Me personally, art is freedom, art is life, art is family, art is friends. It's direction, it's therapy, it's basically everything under the umbrella of life, man. So.
Just creative human expression. I think everybody has creative sensibilities, whether they realize it or not, because I think we as created beings have a creativity that's stirred within us. And we can express that in a number of ways. It doesn't always mean that you're on a canvas or you're on a stage. It can also mean just the ways in which you live your life with intentionality and consciousness. I think if we're creative about the choices that we make and how we move from day to day, I think that's an art in and of itself. And so for me, I think it's a creative expression. It's a force. It's a power that lives within us. And if we allow it to grow and to craft it, it can be something really beautiful.
I think the necessity for art, it's a different outlet. It's an outlet that allows you to be you. It's a creative outlet. It's energy. It's something that's needed. It allows you to be original. So I think having art in the community is important for that reason, just to create and spark new energy, new ideas, new creativity, and new life. So what I do with my work, it seems like the older I get, the more intentional I want to be about, the more intentional I want to be with my art. So being able to use it specifically to raise awareness for something, or maybe spark energy in the youth, or even just being more visible so that other young aspiring artists can see someone in their community doing something that they may aspire to do and make a living and be successful at it.
Yeah, the ways in which I feel that my art can transcend the conditions in which we live is through the raising of the consciousness. Because there's so many messages already out there that are like dumbing us down. They're diluting our power and are distracting us from like being our fullest, best, and most authentic selves. But I think if maybe a kid walks into one of my shows and hears something that I say that inspires him, like, oh, like, I never knew that before. Maybe he goes back and digs a little deeper, does some research, you know, and learns something new about himself, about his culture, about his ancestry, that really puts him on a path of like self-discovery and empowerment. Like, that's my hope. I try to put messages throughout my work, you know. It's kind of like, I think about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, when the slaves were finding their way to freedom, and they had little messages. They had ways to give each other messages to point each other towards where it was safe. Different things they would say and do to like lift each other up and help each other along the way. So I look at music that way. I look at art that way. And we live in a world that can be so violent and oppressive. But I think those of us who are lovers of justice, those of us who are lovers of peace, those of us who are lovers of freedom, we have to work together. We have to give each other like messages of hope.
I believe that we all are artists. In some way, shape, or form. I tell my students this over at the school. They feel like, man, I don't like art. I don't want to come to your class. I be like, for real? Some nice shoes you got on, man. They're like, yeah, thanks. You know, an artist made them shoes, right? And then they start thinking about it. And I say, you know, when you get your hair done and you put the colors and stuff, that's art. And when you matching your hair with your outfit and your shoes, that's art. So you can't tell me you don't like art. It's impossible for you to not be touched or affected by art at some point in your life. It's impossible.
Liberation. Because for me, it's not a one-time event. It's a lifelong process and a practice and a discipline. Like, we got to keep working at this thing. It's an everyday struggle. You know what I'm saying? Some days, you know, as much as I want to champion justice and compassion and freedom, there's days where I don't feel it, where I don't experience it. So I'm gonna need my brother, I'm gonna need my sister, I'm gonna need one of my siblings in the struggle to remind me of that truth. Whether that's through music or through poetry or through dance or just through their presence, you know, walking alongside me. And so for me, that's what I try to do through my art for other people, because I know I need it myself, and so I can only hope that I give it to other people as well.
Cause they used to hang us out there on that poplar tree. But nowadays, all they gotta do is enslave us psychologically. I know the dream is for us all to be free. But once we realize that we all got what we need and rise up together, I know you and I will topple that tree. We gotta realize that we got all that we need. We need to find liberation. Right here, right now. Every generation. Revolution, on the streets they singing it. Revolution, revolution, expressing our grievances. Revolution, revolution, but we ain't really seen it yet. Revolution, revolution, do we really believe in it? They used to hang us out there on that poplar tree. But nowadays, all they gotta do is enslave us psychologically. I know the dream is for one day for us all to be free. But we got to realize that we got the key. We got all that we need to be free and find liberation.
We have plenty to be angry about. Our brothers and sisters are being gunned down in the street, our culture is being stolen, our art is being stolen. But through all this, we have to celebrate ourselves and enjoy whatever makes us smile without feeling guilty about it and feeling shamed. Black joy is an act of resistance.
Art tells the story of an individual's life, their experiences, the story of a struggle that we all know too well.
Art's responsibility is to tell the truth, even if they have to tell a lie for you to figure out that it's a lie so you know what the truth is. There's different kinds of styles of artists. There's people who do a civic social thing. I did the first art over in North Minneapolis in 1979 or 76 on Pilot City Regional Center. It's a 60-foot tall black woman's face looking out, hands coming in towards her as part of the headdress, the hands coming down into a prayer thing, and then it was also turned the other way. So at the bottom of it, of these arms coming up like a serpentine thing, because it was a medical center, was a child crawling and a child sitting. And the title of the piece was called Children Are the World, but of course the reporter somehow didn't like that title and just said artist refuses to say the name. So then the game was on. Somebody's going to define me in a negative way, just a little bit. Probably didn't think about it as negative at all, but that community got a beacon, got a lighthouse that showed this beautiful black woman looking straight out into that whole community, you know, and it was looking for everybody. I'm black and just doing things for black folks, that's crazy. But I am, but I'm not, because I'm doing it for everybody, so my children and my people can go anywhere and people go, oh yeah, how are you doing? You know, they can question if they should say what's up or how are you doing. They learn a little bit more from people's poetry and music and dance and painting.
My name is Ron Brown. My medium is Afrofuturism. I guess I've known I was an artist ever since I went to school, kindergarten. It's like I believe I know my design. That's what I'm designed to do, and so I was born an artist. I know what I am. Again, like that's what I said. Is like I can pour from the well of creativity and swim in that because I know I'm an artist. Once I get done doing this, I might start building houses. You know what I mean? It's like I don't see no limit to like what I'm doing. So, but with Afrofuturism, it's like I never really known. I mean, I've always known what Afrofuturism was because of being a fan of Sun Ra. It just seemed like it's kind of cliche and it's gimmicky now that everybody aspect of Afrofuturism now, and especially in the Twin Cities, is like that's something that I was doing that was keeping me out of the galleries or keeping me out of these so-called scenes, and now it's like that's like the mock, you know, blackness. So and everybody like gravitate towards that. So I mean, it's all good though. But you know, I've been doing Afrofuturism since I was 8 years old. I love art on a level that's probably a little bit more deeper than just making money. It's like my exhaling, you know what I mean? That's like a lot of people do things to get their stress off and deal with their, you know, trauma and things of that nature. And this is a tool that I've kind of mastered before I was even thinking about showing or thinking about, you know, going to school or furthering my education. I knew art was something that I could always go to. And it's always sustained me. It's, you know, it's like it's a love, it's a obsession thing, kind of. Just like how musicians love, like being in the studios and being around music. Artists do that, you know what I mean? And, you know, I had this thing the other day where I did, you know, I had a presentation and, you know, I say it's art is my sword, you know what I mean? It chopped the heads off of the people who be bullshit, you know what I mean, a little bit. So it's kind of been one of those things that's kind of helped me, I mean, take care of my family, one, deal with stress and pressure, two, and then also share something that's also therapeutic. You know, I think that, you know, as people of color, specifically in the melting pot of the Twin Cities, we don't get to see ourselves in positive lights. And I think, so when you see my art, you don't see Malcolm X pictures and Martin Luther King pictures. You see yourself outside those boxes of being Negroes or black folks or African Americans. You see yourselves outside. You get to see my dreams and see how I see myself and how I see all of us. And I think Afrofuturism has been a real good scope for, you know, for that, to wake up black folks. Especially, it's kind of, you know, we go through phases like 60s and 70s, everybody got afros, you know what I mean? It was always kind of like cultural revolutions, you know what I mean? I think that Afrofuturism right now is probably leading ahead of that cultural revolution, that wokeness that we're trying. You see brothers with dashikis on now. You know what I mean? It's like embracing their, you know, more of, you know, our traditional looks and ways and not conforming to get a job and, you know, Afro-punk, things like that, stuff like that. That's really cool out there that showcases some real talent that comes from that well, you know, Afrofuturism. But I think for me, the definition of Afrofuturism is kind of boundless African imagination, void of white influence or void of Western influences. It's kind of like one of those things, it's kind of like something special. It's no different than anybody else who have their own culture and their languages that they speak, that the white man is kind of like an outsider too, you know what I mean? And I think that that's kind of what Afrofuturism kind of like set out to be, because, you know, in the sci-fi world, we make up like, we're the artists, we're the designers, we're the costume designers of all of these cool things, but then you don't see us in sci-fi movies. You don't see graphic novels. You don't see us in the comic book industry. And so that's kind of how I got started as a young person. That was my goal. My goal is to really break the mold of how you see us in the field now. And that's being done already now. So I don't have to do that. You know, there's a lot of artists that are doing that now. So now I have the space and time in my mind to just kind of develop my own style, my own self. Where I see Afrofuturism as far as young people, I'm really just building this for my daughters. I'm really just building like a mindset for my daughters to have like a blueprint of how they can rule and be royalty and have these art and have their imagery. I try to surround, like, this whole space is really my life, and my home is really just a ecosystem of trying to be positive reinforcement to the women in my life. To make them feel appreciated, or it's not even so much the women, but anybody who I welcome into my home, to feel the energy and feel appreciated, that you see, you know, you get to come in and see my life or see my, you know, my imagination.
Basically, the phrase would be stop, you know, very loud, stop. I had a friend, J. Otis Powell, he died recently, and he was like, you gotta shout it out. Whisper nothing. So my work shouts out stuff, but it brings you in a way where it's comfortable for you to come in. And then when you get in there, it gets interesting. And then when you see somebody else is looking at it, they start saying things. but my work will address peace, love, rejoice. Those titles are, I can't even figure out the title now, but my grandmother had a saying, nothing beats a failure but a try. So that's what I do in my work, is to try to get people to communicate with each other by looking at my work or my work being used for some civic, social endeavor that brings more light to people, or health to people, or education, or inequities, that kind of thing.
And young people, I would like to inspire them to dream outside the box of, that art class that you get that ain't really an art class, because that person don't look like you, and that person don't dream like you, and that person don't inspire like you. That person ain't that person don't come to work to make you dream bigger and bolder so that you can make your future better. And that's unfortunate, but that is the education system that we face here in the Twin Cities. We don't see, we don't see teachers of color. We don't see educators of color. They make up rules and regulations and loopholes and boxes to jump through. But in reality, that keeps our kids out. That just dumbs us down. That stops us from building spears and shields for our young men, so they can fight. That stops us from building crowns upon our daughters' heads so they can be objectified, in media and in music. It's like they've blocked all the avenues for us. And so I would like to inspire just young people to really stand up and get out, kind of like almost like really grow your wings, fly away from this, because it is like, if they're telling you that you're not good enough, I'd be a fool to sit there and not surround my daughters, my dark-skinned, brown-skinned, beautiful daughters, with nothing but positiveness and say like, yeah, you can do this, you can do whatever you want. Outside there, they tripping.
Study your artists that came before you. I study all artists, but not so much in the book. It's just looking at their work. I think their work, which is their most authentic self, will tell me more stories. Then I can go back and find out where they lived, or where they got run out of, whose father didn't like them, or whose brother helped them, or how many wives you have. All of that becomes sort of the secondary tier to how this person is putting down lines and how does he make those decisions. That's why it's a back and forth thing between history of the person and history of the piece, because most likely the piece that they're doing is a history of that person's existence at that time, whether it's abstract or realistic.
Drawing, I come up with the colors. I don't use like source material. People are like, oh, what's your source material? Like, what's that? You mean, what did you look at to get the ideas? Like, I dreamed about this. So my end game for this is, I think it's important for us to, I think it's important that I create work that when other people of color who are deficient of spiritual oneness can look and get their little taste when they come into spaces. It's just that in the Twin Cities, unfortunately, there's not a lot of spaces that really encourage that. It's always a gimmick to it. You know what I mean? It's like we just can't really be. It's always it's an agenda to everybody's group shows and gatherings. And again, like I said, most of the time they might not necessarily fall under the same umbrella as what I fall under. And that's, the black man, woman, and child. It might not fall under those things. And so I try to be void of that.
Black excellent. When I realized black excellent, when my dad said, boy, go cut the lawn. Set the table. Fix your hair. Say yes, ma'am. Say yes, sir. Go get a job. To me, knowing who you are and your culture is very important. But black excellence is all that's me at its highest level. All that is in these young, old, super talented, wise, but maybe in pain, and some enjoy African Americans and Africans that are now in America and Africa, which is always in my heart. Black excellence is, period. That's what it is, period. You can't put a word on it.
Here is the fruit for the clothes to flood, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the for the sun to rise. Here is the strange and bitter cry.
All I'm out here to say is I hope that each and every person can realize their potential, whether big or small. We can all light up the darkness in our world, because there's a lot of darkness, and it's up to us to light up the dark. So, light up the dark.
See how I'm growing so fast, as if nothing I could fear but myself. I am growing too sad. This world within this world we're living it just don't cut it. And if I die, I live my rights. Don't you cry. The world isn't right because damages. No, I can't take it, no damages. No, I can't take it, no damages. No, I can't take it, no damages. Why I can see, where I can see. No, I can't take it, no damages. Why I can see, where I can see. No, I can't take it, no damages. Why I can see, where I can see. No, I can't take it, no. I can't take it, no. No, 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 no. No, no, no. Cause see how they want me to be. They want me to be like everything within. But myself, I would never fall. No, 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 no. This world within, this world we're living. No, no, cause living it just don't cut it. And if I die, I live my rights. Don't you cry. No, 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 no. The world isn't right because damages. No, I can't take it, no damages. No, 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 I can't take it, no damages. No, 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 I can't take it cause damages. Why I can't.
It is a glorious feeling. It is a feeling of such empowerment because everybody wants to be us. I mean, our music is mimicked all over the world. The standard of sound and excellence that we give to music is uniquely coming from our soul and from our melanin and from the heartbeat, the rhythm in our heartbeat. And so I have to say, being a melanin-filled artist and a black woman, a black American woman, with all of the history of our sound, the Twin City sound, from Prince to, I mean, you name it, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, to The Time, to even the Pettifors. You know. The way you do today, treat me like your friend, and listen to what I say. 'Cause boy, I'll get you all the way. All the way. both of those families and doing music in that way, I would not pick or choose any other than to be a melanin African-American artist in the Twin Cities. We're so creative, and partly probably because we're in the house 9 months of the year because it's so cold, but I'm so grateful for the creativity that we have. We have such creativity. We're great speakers, communicators, songwriters, musicians. I wouldn't have picked any place else but the Twin Cities. And to be a part of this music culture, I surrender, I digress.
It's not even just for students. You know, we've had teachers. I've had teachers where they come and say, thank you. Thank you for sharing your words. Your music is really powerful. And so I believe my music does have a huge influence on the youth and adults. And I believe that my music does heal people. And music, in a way, for me, is healing myself. Because when I write, sometimes when I'm sitting there, I'm writing the song, and it's like I'm reflecting my thoughts, because I'm writing these things, I'm like, wait, that's exactly something that has happened to me. Obviously, that's why I'm writing it. But when I write it, and then I'm saying it, it's like meditation. It's like you're saying it over and over, and you're writing these words, and then sooner or later, it's like you're manifesting your words, you know? And it becomes a reality, and it's really beautiful, man, because it's like, later on, I begin to see it as I'm playing this song for people. It has healed me, and therefore it's healing other people. It's a reflection. And if it doesn't work that way, people can see that. People can actually see that your words are not being authentic. And so when I get to share my music with people, wherever they are, they can relate a lot with it, you know. And I just feel so much blessed. And I am happier that people can come and smile and say, hey, thank you for your music. That's all I want. That's all I'm looking for at the end of the day. And if I can do that on a larger scale, man, yeah, it's beyond words, man. Sometimes I get goosebumps, man, when I'm done playing. You know, when I'm done playing, I'm just like, whether or not the audience is applauding me, like my music or not, it's just like, man, I know that they see me, they hear me, and they feel it.
To look at me and talk to me and invest in me, I really would not be the person that I am today. I really would not. And so I really realized that that's also a part of being God's queen, is a teacher, to be a grand and premier teacher, to really teach our children that you have something to give the world, to use your creativity and your intellect to really inspire others. How can you take what you have to not only bring about an income or wealth unto yourself, but also how can you build up your community and almost a restorative justice that you give unto the world. And so our children, when they hear me sing, they're like, I wish I want to sing like that. I want to do that. I want to know how to do that. And so I said, okay, I will surrender to that. You know, even though I am a queen that sits upon the throne of creativity, and I have all these different gifts, and you know, I've been inducted in the Minnesota Country Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and just all the different things that I've done to teach the child, so that one day when I am old and they say, Miss Jamela, God's queen invested in me. That to me is what the history books are made of. That to me echoes into time. That is something that I leave as a legacy, as a baton to the next generation. And that is what I'm required to do, because someone did that for me.
It's like, I remember we did this little workshop where it's like people, and I see it now, it's like people, they will become what they're being consciously being fed. So in the sense, when somebody comes in here and say, hey man, he is that guy, he's that guy that's always he's always that guy that's always late or whatever, sooner or later you will become, oh yeah, I'm that guy that's always late, so therefore they expect me to be always late, and so therefore that becomes your paradigm, you know. And in the same way, that's what the media is doing for black people. It's like, oh, they're that black person that always rap, or they're that black person that always play basketball or whatever. And so sooner or later, a lot of the black community starts visualizing that's as their reality, even though there's a whole lot more we can all achieve, you know. So it's quite interesting. I believe sometimes we just gotta step out of our paradigms and see something. It's easier said than done, but we can do it, man, you know. Yeah.
I can listen to jazz music from those times, and I can feel kind of the angst of the moments that they were living in, you know. And it had to be hip hop. From the first time I grabbed a microphone in front of people, I didn't have to ask the crowd to pay attention. They heard my vocal tone and the eyes turn. When they gave me their attention, I knew it. And I knew I couldn't be the type of artist that could just say anything. Just gobbledygook and whatever, and then now you're jumping around like, hey, hey. Nope, no, not me. I couldn't do that. And I won't. Because one day, you know, I plan on living. I don't want to be an 85-year-old man listening to something I created back then and be like, what the hell was you doing? Oh, I was young, so you get a pass? No, you don't get a pass. No, it's not cool to say, bro. I got daughters. I got sons. If all I want them to do is pay attention to bouncing long, then maybe I should have been teaching them something different. But I'm going to keep feeding them the proper information. And then what I don't know, we're going to look up and find our answers to. But it had to be hip-hop. Because hip-hop was built on that. It was built against the grain. When it wasn't allowed, we plugged it into the light sockets. You know, we stole energy at the park. You know, so, you know, we gotta. It was the only medium that would be there for me, and I could say what I wanted to say. You wasn't gonna tell me and censor me. I was gonna get my message out. So it had to be.
I am the founder and executive director of Black Table Arts. An emerging organization that seeks to conjure other worlds through Black art by connecting creatives and cultivating volume in Black life. What I would like people to know about me is that I'm a poet, and I lean on the side of the surrealists that envision a society in which everyone will be a poet, but by that they don't mean people who write poetry, but people who are able to conceive of imagination and empathy. And I think that if we have people who lean into those things, we are taking up a poetic posture, and that's what I'm interested in with my work. Being a caretaker through poetry is what I aspire to be, through poetry, through education, and through gathering community. That's my personal mission. Black Table Arts is trying to get into the struggling practice of perfecting the gathering people, Black people, in Minnesota, in the global north, in the Midwest, and thinking about how do we facilitate, how can art facilitate us being more gentle with each other, and holding space for one another through the public classroom, the open mic, the bonfire, the conference, the anthology. But it's all about being more gentle, I think, and leaning into imagination and joy. So if someone were to come to a Black Table Art space, I hope they would see that it's an invitation to those things. It's an invitation to be curious, to lean into community, to look at language, to study language, get in the rigor of study, but just kicking it, and that there's a pedagogy in kicking it and gathering. And these are the things that might have us dwell differently. Yeah, so.
My name is Tish Jones. I'm a poet. I've been a poet my whole life. I'm gonna be a poet until I die. And I do this for my ancestors, for my family, for my village. My muses are the little people that I love. My muses are my nephew, Makai Cobbins, my niece, Amaya Duran, my little cousin, Daniel Lee, my little brother, Norman Strickland. I do this so that they know who they are, so that they will always know who they are, so that they will always know who their people are, and so that they will see themselves as great and possible, and have a future to dream in. So Rizap.
Once I had little feet that tickled the leaves, and the earth was what the earth was before man made trouble of it. And the soul being shoveled out of the Cadillac comes as a cannon, making don't know how to look for love sound like salt in surgery, a sting that only comes from a door being closed. And once I had little hands that clasped the brim of a branch attached to a woman who knew the hood make men into songs like that, trouble. Here I see those who look like me, who like me have hands dark, who I'm sure touch things like I touch things, who I'm sure kiss black women like I kiss black women, and once a brother who looked like he had lips like mine, who looked like he had been evicted from words like serene, and had trouble with the brown water inside a clear bottle, said too loudly, don't think I won't, and how the hood makes you wish you had guns, and how the hood makes you wish you knew his full name or a memory to say remember, how mother used to walk us to the store, and we see black lovers make of each other what the earth makes of us when it evicts us, and we think of how we wouldn't want to be those men. We think silently to ourselves, holding our mother's hands, I hope.
What is art to me? Art is any and all things creative, or that involve a creative process. That's art. I think there's an art to things, I think there's an art of things, and I think there's art as cultural collateral, or just collateral, period. Skyscrapers are art. I speak a lot, or spoke briefly, and speak a lot in general about the significance of documenting our experience. Art is that. Specifically, whenever art is created by a specific population of people in a specific place and time, what is happening is the creation of culture. Culture is being created. There is a conversation that is happening, and it's literally being documented. It becomes an artifact. It tells the story of a people in a place at a time, and it lives beyond those people. Art remains, right? That's what's so important about the pyramids and the hieroglyphs. And so I just, I mentioned skyscrapers are art. Skyscraper, pyramid.
We see in front of us right now that it's violent is not the best of what we have to offer to the planet and to each other. So Black Table Arts programs, but more important, it's not even Black Table Arts program, it's the people that come. It's the people that come. And then, you know, young people, and sometimes I think we say this cliche, and it's a complicated thing to say, but that, you know, young people are the future, but more importantly, we will be with young people in the future. So we have a responsibility too, you know? And I think that's so important. We can't let ourselves off the hook by saying young people are the future. So it's like we will be too. You know, we will be as well with those young people in the future. We getting old, but we ain't gone. You know, we ain't gone yet. So we ain't off the hook. So I think that's it. So that keeps me going to realize that people are considering otherwise, even in spite of. And also, I come from a tradition of people who considered otherwise, and now I'm possible. You know what I mean? And that's wild, because capitalism really tried it. You know, they really tried it. But joke's on you, we still alive. You know what I mean?
This ain't for wanna-be white black women that's striving to be black white women. Gold diggers are niggas who wanna be women. This is for fine women in tight denim. Night tricking on brown rounders, right for skinning. Sick of the sentence to ditty. Shitty, shiesty, or shifty. This is for the Twin Cities. Forever repping my city. This is for you. My people broke the heavily paid. Stockbrokers or blunt smokers. Get your fetty today. This is for you. All my ladies doing your thing. 2 jobs, school and kids. Handle your biz. This is for you. Grinding for the struggle. Striving to bubble. Living only just to die in this jungle. This is for you. So crumble your herb. Now if you want it, you go and get it.
The vanguard out in front of the people, leading to say and be expressive about whatever we want to talk about. In the 80s with NWA, even though they kind of broke the way for commercialism, at the same time, they still, F the police was a real thing. And we was getting harassed. I mean, I got harassed all the time. I lived over north. Tycel Nelson was a real person. He was a real brother that was shot in the back by Officer Dan May. The messages of hip hop have not changed because our environment has not changed. Until what happens, goes on around us changes, I don't see a reason for my message to change. So I'm not going to change anything I got to talk about.
Crack took over, melanin took back. If the revolution is love, then love has to be the revolution. Sitting down, pot filled with hate, running, and you're still late. Wait, class is now in session. Pull up a chair, sit down, and listen to Willie's subliminal academic breakdown. Noose, tree, river, dark town, slice, child slithers, gasoline sprinkled on the ground. Cut, chop, shake, and mash around the ingredients for a robot. 1 black head, 2 black eyes, 2 black ears, 1 black nose, 2 black lips, 1 black neck, 1 black torso, 2 black arms, 2 black hands, 2 black thighs, 2 black legs, and 2 black feet. 10 toes down. 10 toes down. Pimps and hoes is all we ever let them label us to be. Nigga, color, black, or whatever the title has evolved to be or not, you see. Secretly, you'll find the only ingredient left out was mind. Mind bent up like a crooked spine. Lynch says, drink the wine. Now rewind and use your mind. Willie Lynch says, drink the wine. Operation complete. Transform. He's turned you into a Frankenstein. 1 black brain is not an ingredient for a robot because a nigga doesn't need to think. What do you think? I know. Monday, work, can't think. Tuesday, work, can't think. Wednesday, work, can't think. Thursday, work, can't think. Friday, work, can't think. Saturday, sleep, can't think. Sunday, prepare for work, can't think. Incapable. You've been hoodwinked.
I think art has the potential to build, to promote cultural awareness. I think art has the ability to inspire a stronger sense of self. I think it's about the self that comes to art making, right? If you come to the art authentic and really trying to process something and grapple with something, that's tight. I think a thing that I'm really curious about is I think performance art specifically is being is like in this battle with capitalism right now, in terms of being sort of commodified and, you know, being a thing to try to obtain for a sense of fame rather than a sense of self. So I think it has the ability to inspire a sense of self.
One of the top dudes that host that whole summer thing, and he's getting booed because you got people that look like you and I in the crowd, and when you look out in the crowd, they don't look like him, and they're like, you're pronouncing your R's too much. You know, you're like, I don't like your cadence. You're not talking what I want to talk about. You're talking about your nicotine addiction and cat litter and why you need a coffee in the morning. And we're talking about running from police and being arrested and why we don't got good grocery stores in our neighborhood and why black folks is always backbiting on other black folks dealing with our issues. Hip hop is not just the music, and I think that's what gets lost. So we get it. No, it's not a fair shake. It's not a fair shake in this town. And it happens with our venues. It happens with your opportunities to be heard. And you know, you even got radio personalities here that are on the bigger radio stations that'll tell you right off it's not their job to break talent here. It's not their job to find the next talent that's in Minnesota or to even shake their hand. They'll tell you straight to your face, it's their job to validate you after you're already validated somewhere else. So what they're telling you is that if you're not of that other group and they don't put you in, you know, you got to go elsewhere. You got to be seen elsewhere and get heard and be somebody somewhere else. Because if you stand here and you be somebody, you can be that person to the day that you die. That doesn't mean they're going to put you on the radio. It doesn't mean you're going to get any push whatsoever from them. It doesn't mean you're going to get into the venues. And if you get into the venues, you get into the bigger shows, you're going to pay to play instead of getting paid.
We in a race for more than land and dollars. We gonna lose if we plan to follow president's policies.
Because I know that I am unconsciously mothering my daughter in a way that imitates my feelings towards myself. She is because I am. Motherhood is spiritual work. And when you need spiritual work and to build a relationship with yourself, you notice this is your relationship you have with your children and others. Do you see them? Do you feel them? Are you compassionate? Pain and suffering that is not worked through and given the proper attention will create an environment where self-hatred will unconsciously fester. And that unfelt pain will be passed on to your children and loved ones. Unfortunately, I had to learn this harsh lesson the hard way.
I am the founder of Black Lotus Mothers and Ubuntu Minneapolis LLC. Black Lotus Mothers is about creating safe spaces for Black women to talk about their authentic experiences being Black here in America and mothering. and thinking about the Black Superwoman complex. And Ubuntu Minneapolis was created or birthed out of a need that I saw in the community. I had another sister come to me and basically express the need for some education and support around motherhood. So it is a breastfeeding, education, and early literacy initiative here in Minneapolis. My art is that I create safe spaces for Black women to talk about, or women to talk about their experiences mothering and transforming their pain into power. I'm also a doula or birth worker, so I encourage Black women to have natural births and to use their birthing experiences as a way or a catalyst to transform who they are as women. And those things kind of just came out of my experience mothering and not really knowing what to expect as being considered a Black superwoman, but also not thinking about myself as divine. So it all just came out of just me needing a space to be me.
That's a good story. Very good story.
Okay, I've been telling stories professionally for more than 25 years. And I've traveled to many countries and worked with many different populations, telling, collecting stories, and encouraging people and teaching them how to develop and tell their own stories, because our stories are so important. I've worked with over 1,000 students in the classroom. I use storytelling, the art of storytelling, to stimulate writing, enhance critical thinking skills, to empower students to build self-esteem, because storytelling, that's how powerful storytelling is. Because when a child hears a story and begins to believe in their own ability to do something, because if they hear a story by someone who has no arms, who can draw, and they have 2 arms, what's stopping them from drawing a picture? You know, or how Wilma Rudolph, who had to overcome obstacles to run, you know. So, yeah, I love what I do. I absolutely, positively love what I do.
He is smart. He is sneaky. Like that. When I went to the music time, I say like that. Let's try it again. He is tricky like that. He is smart. He is sneaky. And so they went to Mama Bear and they told her, they said, Mama Bear, if you don't share the land so we can feed our own children, we're gonna have to send Bert Rabbit. She said, I don't care who you send. Can't nobody outsmart me. They said to her, Mama Bear, you don't know Bert Rabbit. He is tricky like that, smart. He is sneaky like that. So the very next day, Rabbit was hiding outside the gate.
So my community has really showed up in a way that has reminded me or affirmed my purpose. You know, a lot of the conversations that I have about just my work, it forces people to think, and it forces people to think outside of the box. And there's a lot of shifting in mindset that has to happen, so I think that's aligned with the community appreciation. But for the most part, I have just been affirmed in the work that I do. You know, my book, Mothering Through Pain and Suffering in Silence, this collection of stories about the Black Superwoman complex, it really forces the community to say, hey, you know, we have put Black women, we put them on this pedestal and made them superwomen, but in the process we didn't realize how damaging it was to their humanity. So I think the community is kind of asking questions and supporting in a way when the stories hit close to home. So I think that has been my journey of just going through this journey where I'm seen as a Black revolutionary. I'm seen as a person who is very unapologetically Black and spreading truth and knowledge. And a lot of times that is only appreciated when the liberation comes through people that you'll never expect.
The festival that I didn't want to attend. And so I've been basically writing and telling stories ever since. I love stories. I think what I love about stories is that those mental images that create in your heart. Stories to me is like a nice, delicious bowl of gumbo. I love gumbo. I love soups. No matter how tired I am or how frustrated I am with life or whatever has happened to me, a story always makes me feel better. I have a friend of mine who's, I know I'm not keeping to the script, but a friend of mine who's been on chemo for 7 years. It's tough. Every 3 weeks she has to have chemo. And so when I talk to her, and she might say, oh, I'm doing so bad today. And I said, well, I just called to tell you I love you. And we start talking about stories. And before I got the phone, we're both laughing. And we're both talking, because storytelling has that kind of power. You know, in the classroom, I use storytelling a lot. I did a workshop. I teach creative writing at Young Authors Conferences. And so my last workshop at Bethel College was, how do we move beyond stereotypes and to acceptance? And so I always tell my students stories. And so I started with the question about how many?
So I'm also the author of a book called Mothering Through Pain and Suffering in Silence. It's a collection of stories about the Black Superwoman complex. And the book was really birthed out of my experience being a first-time mother, constantly being told how strong I was and how much of a superwoman I was. And I was so much of a superwoman that I got to the point where I really had a breakdown and where I realized that I had postpartum depression. And even in the wake of that realization, just me trying to share my story and my experience with people, it came to a point where every single person would just tell me how strong I was, how much I could pray it away, or how much I could just make this go away. And no one really realized that it was hormonal and that every woman experienced it, and Black women are not exempt from that. So it's a collection of stories. There are 34 women who have submitted their stories to this wonderful project, just really talking authentically about the Black Superwoman complex. And I nestle it in the historical context and saying that the strong Black woman and the strong Black woman, the Superwoman complex, was birthed out of slavery, and it was birthed out of the fact that it was a necessity for Black women to be strong, to be stoic, to not show emotion, and to not allow their emotions to overpower them, because that could have meant life or death for the whole community.
Wait a minute. How many of you chose how tall you were going to be? No one? All right, well, how many of you chose your parents? And I went down the list and I says, well, how many of you chose your skin color? And not one of you. I said, shame on you, nobody. I said, well, then if that's the case, how do we dislike somebody because of their skin color, or because they're in a wheelchair, or because their body may be larger than your body? How do we do that? And then I started telling them stories about my experience. I can go into the classroom and have them write, but with me using stories, it's a way to stimulate the imagination, but it shows some commonality. Because we all love, we all hate, we all feel self-conscious, we all go through all of those. But when I start off with a story, then students are more receptive. They start leaning forward in their chairs, and then they begin to smile, you know. And I was telling them about an experience about many years ago. There was a bad earthquake in California. And there was a minister who went out looking for survivors. And so he just wandered off by himself, and he was praying. He heard a cry come from some pile of rocks. So he went and discovered that there was somebody buried underneath there. And he told them to hold tight, he'd be right back. And the person says, please don't leave me. This is it for me. This is my time. So he reached his hand through the opening, and he held that person's hand until they died. He didn't say, what's your religion? It wasn't about color. It wasn't about money, but it was that heart-to-heart connection, and that's what storytelling
Like there's a lack of acknowledgement to when the educational system first started doing budget cuts. The first thing that they took away was art, music, and gifted and talented classes. And I was a part of that growing up. And it really did stunt me because versus being able to creatively express myself, my creativity was stunted. And therefore, you know, it's created roadblocks, and now these kids are expected to reach out into the community and actually search out ways to express themselves artistically.
I got the stuff, I am rich and much, and so I got that wealth. No, I can't go on no shelf. I'm looking at the top like need a caution sign, cause my flow is so dangerous. Where is you aiming? I got to change it. Like I'm a cashier and I got no fear, and I adopt it for them in them streets, cause I know behind closed doors that's where is the Lord, that's where is the Lord. I got that galore, more in store behind closed doors.
So I know how the hood get, dealing with the bad and the good shit. Minute death and destruction, the silence, the violence, the lack of unity, the deficit of triumph. I am black man, stand up, man up. Get your fam and your motherfucking plans up. We can never make a stand until you stand up. You will never be a man until you man up. Elevate what you stand for, stand up. Man up or die with your hands up. I'd rather die with my cannons blasting, CNN cameras flashing. Dirty cat in the casket, then he walk away with his pension laughing. While the vultures dancing, cultures clashing, slaves and masters, we in for grave disasters. Awake the masses, burn the bitch down to the blazing ashes. Freedom to fight.
Hello, my name is Broderick Poole. I'm a visual artist. I specialize in creating artwork on canvas and custom handcrafted patches. I started artwork as a young child in elementary school, about 2nd grade. A few people in my family had some art skills themselves, and so seeing that here and there, my mom actually did custom clothing, did some drawing, as well as my sister. And my grandfather actually did artwork with the canes that he needed to walk with. So I've seen a lot of artwork, and I also was a young, quiet child, so I used art to kind of express myself. I actually work in a youth program, and I also get to teach art there and let them know that there's many different ways you can express yourself other than maybe acting out, or maybe even in sports. There's different ways you can express yourself, and I use art to get that out through the students. And so far it's been real successful, and it's actually been real fulfilling to realize that that I work in a community that I'm born and raised and still live in, and that I actually have an influence on them. So that's one of the main things that I love about my art now, compared to before, where it was just a thing of expressing myself and kind of getting a feel for myself, letting people know that I like sports and I'm into different forms of art, and I'm in love with my state and my community that I live in today. So a lot of my artwork has to do with a lot of images in my community, a lot of the good times. So a lot of people see it, they say, hey, that brings me back to that time when this was going on, or before the 94 highway came through. So a lot of my artwork has to do with the Rondo community, which is one of the most historic black communities in the state of Minnesota. It was railroaded in a form of fashion when the Highway 94 came through. A lot of highways in the whole country, they either was made, when they was made, they would either split through neighborhoods or they would cut the neighborhood off from the rest of the community or the main city. So with some of my artwork that I'm doing, I'm using some of those ideas to portray thoughts, to get different ideas out there of different historical situations that we've been in to affect the Black community, and different ways that I can express myself that can further just the education of what's really going on. There were a lot of situations that happen in life, just in general. On one perspective, they want to remember different things as much as possible, but a lot of times in the Black community, they want us just to forget and get over it. And so I do have a collection where I speak to that, where it shows different historical events where, for instance, in 9/11, which, you know, don't quote me, but it seems like it was a government situation, that it was caused by the government. But either way, they want to say never forget. So I'm trying to get different art to articulate those events, and to let people know that we're not just a community or a group of people that are not just out to strive good things, but there's a lot of different things that held us back. And some of my art pieces that's in my upcoming collection will show and express that. There was a lot of different situations, different housing policies, literacy acts, and still things that's happening to this day that continues to affect us. So I want to get some of those images out there to kind of let people know.
You guys, I want to do a design that represents everyone, each one of you guys, okay? So, when you see it, I want you to just give something else to you know that Chloe, I believe she wants to do
Christ, look like an Englishman or a Frenchman and so forth. They're saying, I'm God, nobody can do anything but me, certain things. And that's an affront to the human family, human spirit. Du Bois narrowed it just to the United States of America about this claim the white man is the centerpiece of all things that's worth anything in the world. His response to the white supremacy ideology was this: you call this your country, not mine. Your country, how came it yours? Before the Pilgrims landed, we were here. It is here that we brought our three great gifts and mingled them with yours. The gift of story, of song, of soft-stirring melodies in an ill-harmonized and unmelodious land. The gift of sweat and brawn to beat back the wilderness, fell the forest, and lay the foundation to this vast economic empire 200 years before your weak hands could have done it. Then there's a third gift, which is the gift of spirit. And stuff comes out of that. The most prominent thing that comes from the gift of spirit is our music. African people all over this hemisphere, the diaspora, have brought into the world new forms of music.
Some raise their hands for the questions. Some raise their hands for the answers. Who raised concern for the mother whose child was killed while raising their hands up? Who raises the taxes without raising the wages? Will we raise our standard of education? Will we raise our voices, raise the vibration? If it takes a village to raise a child, what will it take to raise the nation? It takes a village to raise a child, what will it take to raise the nation? It's time to raise up. Thank you.
Just don't give up. So I don't give up.
I love you.
Nothing beats a failure but a try.
I love you at your best. I love you at your worst. I love you in a dress or sweatpants and t-shirt. I love you when you gain weight. I love you when you stay in shape. I love everything about you that you love, and even everything you say you hate. I love you. I love you when you wake up. I love you without makeup. I love you any time of day in any way because I mean it when I say love. I love you. I love you from start to finish, from head to toe. I love you every spot, wrinkle, and blemish, every freckle and mole. I love both your dimples and your pimples, your mind, body, spirit, and soul. I will love you before and after the here and now, and now I'm here to let you know I love you. I love the way you walk, you talk, you smile, you laugh, you sing. I could cut this poem in half and say I love you everything. Because if you ever think that you're not loved, that just isn't so. No matter what, my love for you is unconditional. I will love you forever and a day. And today is the day I will forever say I will love you just the same. When your hair turns dusty gray, I will love you just because I love you. Always.